So let's talk a little bit about fat loss and get specific about that. So the myths of fat loss, because obviously every single year, I don't even know what the numbers are. I suspect they're in the terms of hundreds of books come out about weight loss and fat loss. And there's always something new coming along and some grand discovery.
Right.
And you bash some myths. One of them is about calories. One of them is about fat. You get into sugar and diet, white carbs. But what are the biggest myths about weight loss that you were able to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt, not just for you, but for other people too?
The biggest myths are actually very easy to dispel because the science is very, very, very solid. It just happens that it's been misreported in the media and in diet books for so long that people think the facts are, in fact, the myths themselves.
So let's start with calories.
Yeah. So with calories, you have a calorie is a calorie. Even Stark, I think his name was Professor Stark, who's the head of the nutrition department at Harvard University, said a calorie is a calorie, whether it's bourbon or fat or sugar, which is as nonsensical as it could possibly be, because the hormonal effects of these calories is really what matters in many cases.
So let's talk about a sugar calorie versus a fat calorie.
Right. So let's talk about a protein calorie as well. So or we'll just say a gram of protein.
Great.
So if you have a gram of protein, or let's say 4.5 calories of protein versus 4.5 calories of carbs, the protein will actually have a number of positive effects that will accelerate fat loss, generally speaking. That could relate to thyroid hormone. It could relate to thermogenesis. So a lot of the calories you consume in protein are dissipated as heat. You lose them as heat, which is not the case when you look at, let's say, fat or carbohydrates. Digestion is also a factor. So it's not what you put in your mouth that matters. It's what hits your bloodstream that matters. And so if you ate 4,000 calories of bark, let's say, you certainly don't have to go to the gym and burn 4,000 calories of bark because your body didn't absorb it in the first place. Right. And you can use that to your knowledge, to your benefit. Let's say when you're eating for New Year's or for a birthday, when you know you have to binge, you can minimize a lot of that damage. The other main argument, more serious issue, I think, with calories is people think about calories in, calories out. It's just beat into their heads. Calories in, calories out. That's all it is. You need to burn more than you eat. Well, as it turns out, humans can get rid of calories a lot of ways. It's not limited to exercise. So you could excrete it. You could dissipate it as heat. That's how Ray Cronise, the NASA scientist, tripled his fat loss, was by using very strategic intermittent exposure to cold. Right. And
so the whole point there is if you lower your body temperature, you're going to burn more of a certain type of food.
Right, you can burn more calories. And in this case, fat calories specifically. And it's what this means is Newton and the laws of thermodynamics, those all work. But nutritionists have been misinterpreting this and sharing the wrong message for decades and decades, and it just won't go away. So the book is intended to come back to the real science and show, actually, I ate almost 7 times my metabolic rate, so my resting metabolic rate. So if you eat exactly your metabolic rate, your resting metabolic rate, your weight should stay exactly the same, according to the calories in, calories out people. Yeah. I was able to eat almost 7 times my resting metabolic rate and have lower body fat 2 days later and weigh in lighter 2 days later after doing that. So how does that happen? Right. It means very clearly that it's not as simple as those nutritionists usually make it out to be.
So one of the things that you explore in the book then, maybe to kind of cut to the chase and reveal the big secrets are, you've got some nutrition advice, some very specific advice, and a diet. And we'll be talking about the slow-carb diet in a little while, so that's one of the things. You've got nutrition advice, which is supplementation, natural, non-drug-like, I guess we can say, that are easy to take. And I've been testing it myself. I've noticed definitely a distinct difference in my energy levels. And I've been doing supplementation for probably 15 years consistently. The next thing you've got is this careful usage of ice, for example. And you ended up coming up not, with something, you did the test where you're in a bathtub with a bunch of ice versus applying ice just to your neck, for example. So you were able to find why and where specifically, kind of getting to your minimum effective dose. So, and again, I guess I'm looking for, if, inside the book, ultimately you've got essentially short, small, easy to execute recipes that hyper accelerate fat loss, and you were able to prove the myths wrong. Right.
No, exactly. And what it comes down to is making really tiny changes that, when used in combination, have a very dramatic effect. I don't want people to have to make huge behavioral changes because, quite frankly, it just doesn't work. Yeah. And I worked with, among other people, BJ Fogg, who's the head of the persuasion lab at Stanford University. I looked at all the research, all the cutting edge stuff that hasn't been published with a lot of the top guys. It just doesn't work when you ask people to change, make these massive, enormous changes. So I would rather say, all right, you're going to wake up, you're going to have 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. Here's a shake. You do that. Boom. Don't have to think about it. It takes 60 seconds. And then you're going to change your coffee by swapping out skim milk and putting in this, or you're going to start using, let's say, stevia instead of agave nectar, which people think is really healthy, and it's actually probably just as bad as high fructose corn syrup when it comes to fat gain. Just these little swaps, and those 4 or 5 things add up, and you find people losing an additional 4 pounds of fat a week, and that's no exaggeration. Actually pretty typical if somebody has 20, 30 pounds to lose or more. And people are surprised by how little it takes. But like we were talking about before, the challenge is finding those small changes in the first place, and that's why I had to do all the experiments.